Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Triple Feature. We're glad you joined us. This week we're doing something a little different. We're actually working with a TV show. We've seen this show talked about a lot. It's a show built around the biblical narrative during the New Testament. The show is called The Chosen. This show has seemed to be loved by many Christians all over. We had never watched it. We wanted to take a look at the first 3 episodes. We're going to be able to be talking about that this week. Before we start that, though, I do want to mention, again, I've mentioned in past videos, but to understand, to be able to help us out, the YouTube uses an algorithm, and our way of being able to reach lots of people out there is based on the fact of you liking the video, commenting, watching the entire video, sharing the video, and subscribing. If you're watching our videos, if you've liked the video, obviously subscribe. If you've enjoyed it, that helps us a lot. Comment, even if it's basically nothing. Liking the video, doing all that sort of stuff helps us. So thank you very much. But most of all, thank you for anybody that's actually watched so far. So anybody that's been supporting us regularly, thank you for that. And just want to give a quick explanation.
Yeah, and feel free to donate money, because mainly we're trying to make money.
Mainly, so, yes, send money to us.
Yeah. Right. I wanted to just say quickly, this has a 9.7 on IMDb.
Wow. Yeah.
15,000 reviewers or people who rated it, which is insanely high. That's crazy.
You can't. You can't live up to that. There's nothing. I'm not even saying what I'm thinking about the show, but I don't care what show having a 9.7 after that many people. You can't live up to that kind of rating.
Oh, it's the largest crowd-funded media project of all time.
Wow.
So this was a big deal. It's created by VidAngel, and his initial budget was about he got about $10 million to kick off the show, which I believe there's only 8 episodes in the first season, right?
Yeah.
That's a good amount of money. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because that's pretty significant.
Yeah. So this is definitely, it seems to be of Christian TV. They have a lot of Christian movies, but of the Christian TV, this seemed to be the biggest deal of them really trying to make a TV series built around not only Jesus, but built around all the characters, a lot of the characters in the New Testament, of fleshing out their stories and giving them a life to it. And we'll also discuss this. I was interested in how they were going to deal with Jesus. I didn't know if they were going to deal with in a way of doing something kind of new with it, or if it was going to go down the normal road of having him just quote scripture, and makes a lot of times very emotionlessly, I guess the word is.
I want to just say really quick, positives before we get into specific episode. That I think the biggest positive to the show, because I want people to know that that I'm before I make jokes about this, because I know a lot of people love this. But I think the positives are that they're trying to make a show that's a character-driven show about the Bible, which is the unique aspect of this show. We're getting in-depth story. The storylines really revolve around these fleshed-out characters that they're trying to build in this world they're trying to build. And because of that, it does make it a lot more interesting than most of these things that we watch. So anyway, I wanted to say that, and I also want to say that any jokes I make are not jokes about Jesus or the Bible. They're about this show.
Yes. Miracles. Signs and wonders. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name.
What do you think about the opening credits?
Well, the opening music credit. Are you talking about the opening music?
Just the fishes thing.
Yeah, so the meaning of the opening caught me off guard, because it cut to it sounded like it was a mix from the music from Sopranos and The Wire. In the water, not all trouble will mess you and the water. It had soul to it. That caught me way off guard for the vibe of the show, for how it starts, even the whole vibe of the show. The opening thing seemed like a different show.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. And I get what they were trying to do, and with the fishes and then the ones turning, and I liked the whole idea, but It does really feel like they took it to somebody in college who, you know, has learned Photoshop pretty well, and they said we want an opening in the style of these visual styles of these really popular shows, but it's too cartoony. The art doesn't look like old fish, you know. It looks like the opening of like Monsters or something to me. Anyway, it's just weird. And
so the opening scene opens up. You see this little girl come out. She's talking to her dad, and she's scared. And he has her, you know, quoting something from Isaiah. And so it's kind of like trying to keep her calm to be able to know that she's God. And this sort of thing that he's, you know, that she's the Lord's. The Lord, it's, you know, all these different things about who created her. And this verse comes important later. And she uses that, and then she wakes up, and she's older, and she's in bed, and she's got blood on her. And there's this guy running down the thing, and he's like, you know, she attacked me, blah, blah, blah. And he's yelling, and there's this Roman soldier, and he's like, get away from me, dirty dog, or something like that. And so already I was kind of like, when it opened and they did the opening scene, I was like, okay, so I can already tell we're dealing with a lower budget.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with we're not dealing with a high budget here, but this isn't putting me too off guard. I'm not like, what is, like, I would never watch this or anything. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, not a super high budget. So they kind of immediately throw into the fact of like, okay, whoever this woman is, I couldn't tell if she was supposed to be a prostitute, or what she was supposed to be at the beginning, but I was like, this woman's obviously possessed. They seem to be hinting at like she's possessed and she's hurting people. Did you guess immediately at the beginning who she was?
No, but I thought I did. I thought we were going to be making up our own characters, so yeah. I didn't. I was assuming we were going in that direction, so no, I didn't. And then I thought, yeah, so no, I didn't. Not until a little bit later.
Yeah. So then we get the shot then coming up, which you really quickly realize is Nicodemus. Mm-hmm. He's rolling down the thing. So if anybody's watching this, we have the Nicodemus character. He doesn't show up much, obviously, in the narrative of the New Testament, but he is the one that Christ comes and he asks questions about how a man can be born twice, basically. And he asks these questions, and Jesus is like, aren't you basically a teacher of the people? And he explains you must be born of the water and the Spirit. And you have the whole thing of the debate about whether he's talking about baptism, all this sort of stuff. So Nicodemus is this important character. This time he's showing up, and he's obviously having to make a deal with the Romans. This Romans obviously like, look, you know, we take a bunch of taxes, but we need help from you also to be able to do some stuff. And he's like, you know, basically leave me alone. He's heading out to go basically like give a lesson.
Yeah.
Which I recognize that actor.
It's Raji.
He's who?
No Reason the Juice.
Oh.
It's Encino Man. It's the
wait a minute. It is from Encino Man.
From Encino Man, who's mad because they're wheezing the juice out of his convenience store.
They are.
We figure wheezing little juice. No, wheezing the juice.
He is the wheezing the juice. This is a crazy twist.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. And they haven't revealed it yet. That's why I didn't want to say it. But I assume at some point in the show they'll get to that.
I'm sure that will be mentioned at some point. Yeah, but there's got to be some reference to wheezing the juice.
No, wheezing the juice.
And then we get introduced to this character. Comes out, obviously has some money. He's putting on nice sandals. He's getting ready to cover his nose so you don't have to smell. He comes outside. He's like fidgety. Immediately steps in poop. And then there's like this white dude who's pulling the thing. It's my first thought. I was like, who's the white dude? This white guy who's like, you know, obviously is like, I don't like you, tax collector. And he's like sneaking him into the market. So you have this really fidgety guy who I don't know what it is. You have this white dude pulling him along, making a lot of references, a lot of jokes and stuff. And I was like, okay, so I think this guy's somebody else too. I'm trying to figure out who he is, but he gets to the market and we find out this guy, like, to me, I mean, I understand at the time, supposedly people didn't like the tax collectors because it was a Jew working with the Romans. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time believing that you can't even walk through the marketplace without everybody staring at you.
Okay, so this is when did you realize this was Matthew? Because I assumed it was pretty quickly.
Once I knew for sure it was a tax, like, yeah, I assumed it was Matthew, but I wasn't 100% sure that maybe they're pulling in a character, you know,
So
that
this
was
is the
new.
issue with this. A big issue with this show and so many other things is that they try so hard to make this witty dialogue of like people making jokes. I mean, it's all over the place in this show.
Yeah.
And basically what it is it's one, it's to cover up bad writing. And basically it's that the writers can't write, they don't have any confidence that they can write interesting dialogue without trying to copy this common writing structure that you see all over the place on television now. And so if you remove mostly all the humor, or like 95% of the humor, because as far as I know, these people at this time period aren't known for their like constant back and forth hilarious dialogue, that when you take all that out, you end up with very dry dialogue. But that's not a problem if you know how to write, if you're a good writer.
Yeah.
The issue is, and I think it's not only that, but also a distrust in your audience of being able to stay connected without constant humor. And then on top of it, it's an issue of, we want these characters to feel relatable. And so the way you do that is by having them have humor. But again, I would assume that you have these people who back then who wouldn't be just constantly dropping zingers left and right. But I guess this whole show reeks of like modernity. Is that a word, right? That everything in the show feels modern. The way the people speak, the jokes they make, the relationships with each other, the way the wives interact with their husbands, the way the husbands interact with their wives, the gestures they make, everything feels just like modern day people with accents.
So we have that introduction of them, and then we end up having the introduction, which I think is the worst introduction, the absolute worst introduction of the show, which is the introduction of Peter and Andrew.
Yeah.
Peter, of course, being very important to this story, I would think overall, as things are going to set up. Peter, being the main apostle that spoke about through all the Gospels. Peter being the person that, the Catholics consider the first pope.
The always disappointing FedEx Pope. There he is right there. He's easily one of the worst characters ever. Let's bring him in right now. FedEx Pope, want to get in?
All these different things. He's a very important character in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. And when we see him, we get him in this thing where he's fighting this guy, and there's a circle of people around him betting. And I was like, what's going on? And he's getting beat up, and he's being sassy, and he's talking to this guy. He's like, basically like, I'm sorry I married your sister. And the guy's just like, I'm going to beat you up. And then you really get this idea quickly that, like, this is a scam. Like, they're trying to act like he's getting beat up, because all of a sudden Peter decides, and he's laying on the ground, he's hurt. And then somebody, the director and the writer, someone was like, what if we basically have him he flip himself up off the ground? Like, is it a back handspring?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really call it. He flips himself up, and I went, oh, okay, this is what in the world? Yeah. And then Peter's like, they call me wine hands.
Yes, if you want to throw down in fisticuffs, fine. I've got Jack Johnson and Tom O'Leary waiting for you right here.
Yeah, that was good because of what he does to the livers.
What he does to the liver, which I didn't know if that was knowledgeable at the time, that wine was bad for the liver or not. I have no clue. Yeah. That alcohol having damage to the liver, whatever. But
and I think what you're trying to say is if it's an anachronism or not, it's such terrible writing, it outshines that no matter what. It doesn't matter. Whoever thought it would be smart to say they call me wine hands, and they lamplight it, right? Later they make a joke about it, but it doesn't cover those sins.
No, he says he calls himself wine hands, and everyone's having a good time, and he's talking about the fact that his brother, basically, that he's fighting is his brother-in-law, and they don't like that he married his sister, and so he keeps having to fight these guys. And then the other brother comes from behind him in this wacky thing and punches him and knocks him out. And Andrew's back there like, and he goes like, wah, wah. I think it made that noise. Wah, wah. And he's like, oh, and he's like, got to pay the money over our scams. We were about to get the money, and because Peter can actually fight or whatever. And I was like, why was this the introduction to Peter? Of all the things it starts out with, I was like, I don't even care the idea that he's fighting. or maybe you have him doing that sort of stuff. It's just it's so wacky.
Well, and again, yeah, it's such a it's a same tactic you'd see in like a Disney Channel show or something, where it's like we're going to introduce them as these they're like the rascals, and they're people you wouldn't think these would be apostles, you wouldn't think these would be chosen people, but without giving them anything. I mean, I know they have some issues, but without giving them anything, like doing something really bad or really problematic. So you have them doing something that's not good, ripping people off and fighting. But then again, you try to soften it with humor, and it just comes across goofy. And because I mean, so obviously, say what you want about them. Obviously, they were they weren't perfect people, and they probably had serious problems and stuff. But I'm assuming these people were probably very serious, not just with jokes, but just they just took their lives and everything they were doing probably very seriously. I'm not trying to rewrite the show for him, but it's just not a good opening. It's just not good. You just immediately just don't care about these guys.
Yeah. So you get this move, and then we go into basically Nicodemus is asked to go into basically this ghetto area to be able to try to help this woman who named Lilith, whose name we saw at the beginning. They call her Lilith. And that they try to get him in there to basically do an exorcism. And now I think the storyline of her, but the storylines going on in this first one, this is the only storyline of all of them that I consider okay, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, it's not great. It's not like riveting to me, but I'm not laughing, and I'm not really annoyed by anything per se. But Nicodemus comes in and he does his ritual of trying to cast this demon out. And she comes up basically and lets him know there's multiple demons in her and that he has no power there. She calls him a teacher, but he has no power, and he freaks out and runs.
And so what I want to say about that scene is while I agree with you, it was kind of, and I don't want to turn these episodes that we're doing here into just hypothetical ways that could be better. But to me, this scene seemed like such a good opportunity to have Nicodemus come in with real power. And to show his confidence and his strength, and then when he sees the possession, you would see him recoil, and then you would recognize the lack of strength he actually does have.
Yeah,
with the lack of power. But instead, they kind of have him creep in, like not really sure of himself. He's just kind of saying stuff, and he's like, he already looks kind of nervous, and then he sees her and he gets more scared. And I thought, why not have that better transition and juxtaposition of him coming in with real authority, at least from his side.
Real faith.
That you feel like he's about to come in and just tear this place apart.
Come on, boys. Let's go tear this mother down!
Yeah. And then when he sees her face and she says whatever she says to him, he immediately shrinks. Like, oh man, this is not what I thought. Yeah. But instead we just, and again, I don't want to like pick apart the show too much because I do think this was one of the better parts, but it just seemed like such a big missed opportunity to really have like an impactful scene where you're like, wow, this is a cool, because everything else in it was fine.
I agree with you, because I think, in retrospect, thinking about that of his character, he didn't want to go into this and to do this thing in the first place, which made sense in the way of looking from his side as a Pharisee of saying, I'm not going in where all these rabble rousers are. I'm not, we're keeping ourselves clean. We're not going to be there. But it would have been nice to see him once he decided to go there, to go in there with faith and like we're going to take care of this. Like, I am a man of the Lord. I'm a man of God, and I'm going to do this. And then show that him have to shrink back and deal with realizing that he went in to do and was completely rejected. And
I think because this should have been the turning point in his story of when he starts to question and doubt and really that will lead up to ultimately his meeting with Jesus.
Yeah.
And his conversation with Jesus. But instead, I feel like they already had those seeds planted before that. And so the scene acts as a hinge point, but an unnecessary one.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Plus, they were setting up a lot of things in this, which I understand you have to, you need to set up your world and set up what's coming before. And so you need these things to happen. I wasn't a big fan of how they were setting up, like, we know Jesus is coming in, and so we get these constant things of like people walking through the thing, and then there's a blind guy going like, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the Messiah? Tell me you're the Messiah." And I'm like, "Huh?" Like it's so obvious. It's and then people are writing on the walls something about the Messiah. Like it, I understand you're trying to show like people are looking forward to the Messiah. They think he's going to come and probably free him from the Romans and stuff. But sometimes it's like it's handled with like the blind guy that's just saying, "Are you the Messiah?" as someone just walks by.
It's not the most.
It's heavy. What's the word? Heavy-handed. It's very heavy-handed in the way of letting you know that this is going on. So Mary starts going, or Mary. They just gave this. I started. Spoiler alert. Lilith. Before we realize she's Mary, Mary Magdalene, not Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary Magdalene. She starts hanging out at this bar, like she does, and she hangs out, and she has this guy that's like she's like I've been going through tough times. I still have this sickness, basically, and he's like, drink this, and then people are like rude. They call him a eunuch. They don't like the eunuch.
I'm not, and by the way, I'm not buying anything that happens in this bar. By the way, ever. I'm just like, are women allowed to just wander into bars like that by themselves, and then guys are like hitting on her? And then she's like, "Get away from me!" And they're like, "Oh man!" And I'm like, "What is?" I like, what? Anyway, so keep going.
Yeah. But basically, the bar thing sets up a very important scene near the end here. So we'll kind of go towards the end of this episode because Peter talks to his wife, has this whole conversation where she's like, "Did you beat up Jehoshaphat?" And they have like this wacky conversation where she's like, "My family." It's like she's sassy, and
there's a lot of empowered women. A lot of women that are really like feminists, and
a lot of empowered women 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. Which I don't really see in the New Testament. I don't really see these empowered women, but maybe they were all sassy and empowered, and that's what's going on. But we finally at the end. This is what I will say. They're very bold in their choice of introducing Jesus. Very bold. Because they introduced him in what I consider an overall a very non-biblical way.
Yeah.
So now we do know that Mary Magdalene talks about her she had demons cast out of her. That's all it says. We don't know anything really about her. So this we don't know how it happened. We don't know who did it. We don't know all these different things that were thing. This one alludes to the fact that Jesus shows up and he knows her. He seems to know her name, and he's talking to her. And then she's basically like, "Don't touch me. Get away from me."
Yeah.
And as she leaves the bar, he then quotes that verse from Isaiah, right? That she is the Lord, basically, "You're mine." And she turns around like, basically, "Who are you?" And he comes forward and he puts his hands on her head, and you know at this time that he's healing her. Now, this was the only scene for me personally that overall I thought worked to a certain extent, because I did like having Jesus. I did like his overall presence. I liked the person they actually cast. You may disagree with this, but I liked how he looked. I liked that he came in very normal. That he didn't, and they had a scene with him. It didn't feel like he entered. The door didn't bust open with a light. It didn't come in with him just quoting like scripture.
And that's what I wanted to say is this was bold and it's unique because I've never seen any show depicting Jesus where they introduce him and at first you think he's a date rapist. And then you're like, nope, not date rapist, is Jesus. And you're like, oh, okay, that's good. But because he's like, that's the whole thing, right? She's creeped out. He's just like, "Hey, I'm at the bar," and she's like, "Leave me alone." And then he's just like creeping in the shadows behind her, and she's like, "Get away from me." And then he's like, "Nope, I'm the Messiah."